Mm.
And before they could do that, they've had to do this very, very slowly and very, very carefully. Before they can do that, they've had to disarm the general population. Now, in 1968, they brought out the Firearms Act.
Yeah.
And that was there was a meeting of the Club of Rome that year, and it was similar to the Bilderberg type thing, which I'm sure you'd be aware of.
Yeah.
And they decided that they were going to disarm the general population. And of course, they brought out the Firearms Act in 1968, supposedly to protect the law-abiding public from people with guns. Well, criminals.
Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder, treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
Vulnerable to criminals, because criminals know they're the only ones who have weapons, who have guns, and so they can attack with, they can just go anywhere they want, knowing that nobody can do anything to them, against them. And then after the Firearms Act, because they had to do this in stages, what they had to do then was gradually, because under the Firearms Act, that anybody who was a member of a gun club, target shooting, clay pigeon shooting, rifle shooting, whatever, who had a legitimate reason for having firearms, could apply for a firearms certificate, and he would be checked out by special branch and all of that to make sure that he wasn't a lunatic and he wasn't a danger to the public.
Yeah.
And then they would give you a firearms certificate. And then you would apply, and for each gun and for the amount of ammunition you could have for each gun, you would apply, and it would all go down on the firearms certificate. Well, that meant that there were thousands, tens of thousands of law-abiding citizens in this country. Well, I'm saying this country, I'm in Ireland at the moment, but in the UK, we'll say, in the UK,
yeah.
Because it was the 68 was the UK Firearms Act. And there were tens of thousands of people in the UK who, quite law-abiding, quite legitimately, were sporting shooters, do pistol shooting, target shooting, rifle shooting, clay pigeon shooting, etc. And some of them had semi-automatic weapons. That's weapons that fire once each time you pull the trigger, and they self-reload, and then the next time you pull the trigger, they fire again. But they don't do fully automatic fire. In other words, you pull the trigger once and it empties the magazine.
Yeah.
Right. So lots and lots of people, tens of thousands of people in the UK had semi-automatic pistols, rifles and shotguns. And the powers that be, the New World Order, in their plan to disarm everybody, then do false flag events. They do PSYOPs. And what happened in Hungerford, the Michael Ryan incident,
yeah.
I believe and am firmly convinced that was a government PSYOP, that he was mind controlled to do what he did and then kill himself so that nobody could question him about what had happened. And of course, as a result of that, they then managed to bring in a ban on semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, so that then people who were legitimate shooters could only have single shot, bolt action or single shot shotguns. They could no longer have semi-automatic weapons. And then if we go approximately, as you were saying, it seems to be a cycle of, they have to wait a period of time for things to settle down and become normalized.
Yeah.
And then they do it again. And in 1996, probably many of your listeners will know about Dunblane, where it is alleged that Thomas Hamilton, who was a paedophile, went into a school in Dunblane and shot dozens of children and some teachers and all of that, and then committed suicide. And there are a lot of aspects to Dunblane that need to be investigated and need to be explained. They said that Hamilton, went in and shot all those people, and that then he killed himself. And they say that he killed himself by putting a revolver in his mouth, pointing it upwards. This is what Lord Cullen said. Mm-hmm. And then he blew the back of his head off with a revolver. Now, the only problem with that is that he didn't have a revolver.
Yeah.
Because the first person into the gymnasium where he was found, and the children, was the janitor. And the second person in was an off-duty policeman. And he was there to collect his daughter. And this policeman is on record as stating that there was no revolver. Thomas Hamilton was laid with his back of his head blown out, and he had 2 Browning 9mm semi-automatic pistols, one at each side of him. And the caretaker was told by the policeman to kick one of the guns away from him, away from Hamilton, because he was still gurgling and making noises, so he wasn't completely dead.
Of course,
and to take the other pistol out of his hand and do the same, to move them away from him, so that, you've seen how people in movies anyway, how people are dying, so they wouldn't want him to, to be pulling the trigger as his body's convulsing.
Yeah.
But there was no revolver, all right? But the inquest, the Cullen inquiry, says that he shot himself with a revolver, and there was no revolver there. So, again, it has all the hallmarks of a government psyop. Lots of people have speculated on this, and proper investigative journalists have looked into it, including a friend of mine in Germany, Mike James. And there is a high-level, high-ranking paedophile ring in Scotland. And what it appears happened is that they set Hamilton up as a patsy. He was a procurer, or so they say, a procurer of young children for this paedophile ring, which consisted of high-ranking members of Tony Blair's government, ministers, not backbenchers. Okay, and so the only sense that it makes, as far as the paedophilia is concerned, is that they wanted to kill all the children, so that there were no witnesses who could testify against the members of Tony Blair's government, because it would have brought the government down. I mean, these were high-ranking people, and then they set Hamilton up, and then they killed him. He couldn't have shot all those people himself in the time frame that he's alleged to have done it. So there was either a team of shooters there that then shot him with a revolver. That's the only sense that it makes, okay? But there's many facets to Dunblane. One of them is the paedophile thing, but the other thing is to rid and create a mass. It served a lot of purposes. The other purpose was to get rid of all the handguns.
Yeah.
Because they need to totally, the New World Order, who are going to murder everybody, including all your listeners, have to disarm everybody. So this agenda, they have to get rid of all handguns, because a handgun, unlike a long arm, a rifle or a shotgun, you can conceal a handgun. So if they come to if they send people out to murder you, they won't know if you have a handgun.
Yeah.
They would be able to see if you had a long arm, but not if you had a handgun. So they had to get rid of all handguns because they absolutely are terrified that there could be anybody who could fight back against them when they come to the extermination of the what they call the useless eaters.
Yeah.
And it had to be done in Scotland. Hungerford, okay, was in the UK. That got rid of all the semi-automatic shotguns and rifles. But they had to do the handguns in Scotland because if they'd have done it in England, it wouldn't have necessarily have affected Scotland, because Scotland is a separate jurisdiction from England and Wales.
Yeah.
Okay, so they had to do it in Scotland so that it would be UK wide. It would cover the whole of the UK. And so that's what they did. And then since then, of course, there's been numerous occasions when there's been some small child who's been injured with an air gun, and or maybe even with a crossbow. And then there's been a big hoo-ha about, we have to ban all air guns and we have to ban crossbows and all of this, because they want to and of course they've made it illegal to carry a knife. People at one time used to wear swords, and
yeah.
all of that, and sword sticks. The gentry used to have sword sticks and all of that. They want to totally and utterly disarm everybody so that nobody can fight back. And then, when they're sure that nobody can fight back, then they're going, which is good, they're pretty much there.
Yeah.
They're then going to start with their depopulation program.
Well, I think we've mentioned off air as well, which seems striking. As they've disarmed the nation, basically stripped them of any form of defence, they've massively armed themselves. With regards to the police, I made the reference that the way they look now, that they basically go around dressed up as Darth Vader, armed to the teeth.
Yeah.
All the body armour. So they have become.
They've gone from they've gone from being, the local Bobby, he's in blue with a truncheon, and we'll never carry weapons, Do you remember? Well, I don't know how old your body is, but for years and years and years, there were talks about, we will never, policemen don't want to be armed, they never will be armed. They'll just have the truncheon, and all the rest, because if they get armed, then the criminals will arm themselves and all of this. Well, they've gone from being the boys in blue and like Dixon. I don't know if you remember Dixon.
Yeah,
Green.
I'm 53. I'm old enough to remember. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, and all of that. And he was a lovely guy, and the series. Yeah, and a nice community neighbourhood Bobby who everybody could go to with the problems and have a chat with and give a cup of tea to. All of that. It's gone from that to we now have these people in black uniforms, stab-proof and bulletproof vests, Kevlar helmets, all this body armour, and carrying MP5, Heckler and Koch MP5 submachine 9mm submachine guns.
Yeah.
And also Glock sidearms, 9mm pistols. It's just absolutely incredible, and it's happened in just a very short space of time, really. In the overall time of this planet. We're talking the blink of an eye, really.
Yeah.
It's gone from Dixon of Dock Green to these thugs, and that's what most of them are, unfortunately.
Become so normalised. Muad'dib, sorry, but
anyway, can I just go on with this theme while I'm on it, because I like to concentrate on that.
Yeah.
And warning the listeners, that they have to do something about this, because they need to look at Agenda 21. The UN Agenda 21 is the depopulation of the planet, right? Where only the elite will survive, and then they will have just a few million slaves in order to grow the food for them and make the clothes for them and basically, be slaves for them.